Welcome to our channel, ladies and gentlemen. Mutahi Nguni is mocking William Samoei Ruto, and the direction that he has taken is one that is very scary. Recently, the Ruto administration was unable to pay salaries to his civil servants, and they gave several reasons why they could not do this. They heaped blame on the previous regime, as has always been their norm. People have weighed in this debate, and many are telling this administration to stop blame game and shifting goalposts and ensure that they sit down to work, they stop politicking. So Mutahi Nguni said something that is very scary. It's a very simple message, but when you expand it, you realize that he's simply telling William Samoei Ruto that people will catapultate his head. He's saying that every government gets broke. It is not a disease. Give Ruto a chance to make structural adjustments to his government. And if the civil servants cannot afford bread, they should eat cake. Bread is in cups, cake is in cups. That statement looks very simple, but that statement is very tormenting, because if they don't have bread, let them eat a cake is a statement that has been associated with a certain Quin during the French Revolution in 1789. And a story is being told that there was a lot of drought during that period in France, and rodents had virtually destroyed crops. So in the wake of all this economic turmoil, people went to Mary Antoinette, I hope I pronounced it well, and they told her that, Queen, your people are really suffering, they don't have bread. In response, Mary Antoinette replied that if the citizens don't have and can't afford bread, then let them eat cake. That story goes on that became the beginning of French Revolution, and it became a figure of rebellion. People never liked her for those statements, and later they beheaded her head. They chopped off her head in the process of revolution. So for Nguni Mutahi to make such statements, he is trying to make a mockery of a very enormous and serious thing. Because one, Mary Antoinette was someone who depicted an attitude of detaching herself from the ordinary mwananchi. Remember, a piece of cake is much more expensive than a loaf of bread. And so when you go to someone, an authority, and you cry out that you don't have bread, then she tells you that if you can't afford bread, then you can take some cake. This is teasing and mocking someone who is hungry. No wonder they later beheaded her. So Mutahi Nguni is telling William Ruto that he is not in touch with his people, that he does not take seriously the reality on the ground. Why? In an event, or in the event that you are unable to pay your civil servants, the best thing to do in a structured organization, you let them know in advance. You prepare them psychologically, because there are people who have got loans to pay. There are people who have got standing orders. And when you don't meet this payment, bank will charge you for failing to remit those funds. So it's always good to tell your civil servants in advance. Number two, the civil servants live here in Kenya. They are not visitors. They know what transpired before, during, and after elections. And they know all the promises that William Samoei Ruto made to Kenyans. So for you to come here and tell them that we are unable to pay you because there are a lot of loans that were taken, William Ruto was part and parcel of the previous government. He complains that he had been edged to the periphery, but nothing can be further from the truth. So the sentiments by William Samoei by Mutahi Ngunyi are sentiments that State House must take very seriously, because those statements depict revolution. And in Kenya, Kenyans might not ask for bribe, but they will be asking for ugali, unga revolution. It will reach a point, because many experts believe that there is nothing as bad as an ordinary man who has gone to the street without being called upon by a politician. Leave alone the one that you blame Raila Amolo Odinga, that is the one who is wreaking havoc in this government. Leave alone the one where you blame Uhuru Kenyatta, that is the one who is sponsoring these maandamanos and demonstrations. The one that a person sitting in a house is looking at his or her child going hungry and there is nothing he can do. Then he decides, let me go to the streets. I either die in the house or I die in the streets. And William Ruto is simply being called upon to tighten his belt, because we can't afford blame game for 7 years. I mean, for 7 months, ever since he occupied the most coveted house in the land. We can't afford wastage, where every day you go for interdenominational prayers or Thanksgiving rallies in churches and you keep on playing politics. We can't afford this kind of joke where you say that the national coffers are empty, yet you can afford to approve billions of shillings to buy vehicles for the chief minister and deputy president and their spouses, as if their spouses do something that is economically viable to Kenyans. You can't say that you don't have money, yet you appoint 50 CSs, chief administrative secretaries, when the law caps it at 22, despite a court order. You cannot do this, because this is a slap in the face of the hustlers. You cannot afford to stop talking about the hustlers now. Yet it was the core of your campaign. Today, William Ruto talks about 2027. Today, they spend, in fact, when you see them in churches, 3/4 of their time will be spent talking about Raila Amolo Odinga and the opposition. Or it's only a quarter of the time that they will talk about something tangible. And so this tweet is one that William Ruto must take very seriously. Otherwise, a revolution will come. And if there will never be any revolution, if William Ruto will be lucky to rule for 5 years, 2027 will be a very difficult time for him. The only saving grace is that Kenyans are gullible, because they will still campaign using the name of Uhuru Kenyatta. They will say that they inherited a dilapidated economy, they have tried, but it is because of the loans that Uhuru Kenyatta took, it is because of the looting that Uhuru Kenyatta took. Today, they don't even say that we have billionaires who benefited from the stadium, people like Moses Kuria, and those even the KRA chairman. They don't talk about corruption in this government. They want to escalate corruptions that they allege took place during the previous regime. But I want to end by saying one thing. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua keeps on saying that they want to take Kenya where it was, economically speaking, during the Kibaki era. But I've always said on this platform, and economists have said, that when the former president Mwai Kibaki took over an economy that was even poorer than the one that Rigathi Gachagua inherited, Mwai Kibaki was never heard even at one point blaming the 24 years that Moi had been in power. He simply called his economic think tanks, they strategized, they planned, and within no time, the Kenyan economy had been resuscitated, and we could see signs and symptoms. If this government wants to succeed, they must stop blame game. Otherwise, Muktai Ngunyi's prophecy will be fulfilled, and that is my take.